You know, when water gets into your home, every single second counts. It's this frantic race against moisture, decay, and, of course, the silent spread of mold. But have you ever wondered, after you make that panicked call for help, what actually happens next? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain and show you the science-backed step-by-step process that professionals use to restore a home after water damage.
So let me ask you a question. What do you think is the single biggest threat to your home? Is it a fire? Maybe a break-in? A big storm? Yeah, those are all good guesses, for sure. But the data shows that the most common and often the most destructive threat is a lot quieter. And, well, there's a good chance it's already inside.
You know what I'm talking about. It's that drip you can't quite hear in the attic, or that slow leak happening inside a wall, or maybe it's that old pipe just waiting to give out under your floor. Yep, I'm talking about water damage. And honestly, for most homeowners, it's not a matter of if it's going to happen. It's really a matter of when.
Okay, so let's dig into these unseen vulnerabilities. Because you might be sitting there thinking your house is solid, totally secure, but you would be amazed at how many hidden environmental and structural factors put pretty much every single property at risk.
Just take a place like North Texas, for example. The problems they deal with there are pretty much universal. You've got this expansive clay soil that's constantly putting stress on foundations. Then you have intense storms that bring flash floods. And that's just outside. Inside the home, you've got aging pipes, HVAC systems dripping condensation, and of course, the ever-present risk of a burst pipe from a sudden freeze. It's like a perfect storm of potential water disasters.
And then it happens. You walk into the kitchen and feel that awful, dreaded squish under your feet. A pipe has finally burst, or maybe an appliance failed. Right there, in that moment of chaos, the absolute first thing to understand is a critical fact. Not all water is created equal. The source of that water changes absolutely everything.
See, the restoration industry, which is guided by the IICRC, that's the Institute of Inspection, Cleaning, and Restoration Certification, classifies water into 3 categories. Category 1, that's clean water saved from a broken supply line. Category 2 is gray water, which is contaminated, think water from a dishwasher overflow. And then there's the worst-case scenario. Category 3, black water. This is grossly contaminated stuff from sewage or floodwater. In this classification, it dictates the entire strategy for cleanup. And here is exactly why that matters so much. 48 hours. In a damp, humid environment, that is all the time it takes for mold to start growing on wet materials. And that's not just a guideline, folks. It is a biological deadline. What this really means is that the situation is constantly getting worse. That clean, Category 1 water from a burst pipe, if you just leave it for 48 hours, it can actually degrade into contaminated Category 2 water as bacteria starts to multiply like crazy. The problem literally gets more dangerous with every hour that ticks by. This is exactly why professionals don't just show up and start, mopping. They follow a very precise, well-rehearsed playbook. So let's walk through this emergency response phase, which is all about taking control of the chaos. It all kicks off with your emergency call and their immediate dispatch. Once they're on site, the crew assesses the damage, checks for any safety hazards, and figures out what category of water they're dealing with. Then the real work begins. Powerful truck-mounted pumps start extracting all the standing water. Any materials that are just beyond saving, like totally saturated drywall or insulation, are carefully removed. And finally, a whole array of specialized drying equipment gets set up. The main goal of this entire rapid-fire phase is really simple. Stop the bleeding. It's all about preventing the damage from getting any worse and setting the stage for the real science to begin. Because believe me, getting a structure truly deeply dry is a science. It's so much more than just pointing a couple of fans at a wet spot and, hoping for the best. This entire process is built on a field of science called psychrometrics. Now, I know it's a complicated sounding word, but it's for a pretty simple idea: controlling the relationship between the air, the temperature, and the moisture. By strategically manipulating humidity and airflow, technicians can create this supercharged drying environment that literally pulls the moisture right out of the building materials. And to give you an idea of the kind of power we're talking about here, a single commercial-grade dehumidifier can pull 150 pints, that's over 18 gallons of water, right out of the air in just 24 hours. This is absolutely crucial, especially in humid climates where the air is already saturated with moisture. So this is the toolkit that makes it all happen. Dehumidifiers, they're the workhorses, just pulling all that moisture from the air.
High-velocity air movers are placed in very specific spots to create a vortex of air, which speeds up evaporation. And to find that hidden moisture, they use thermal imaging cameras that can actually see temperature differences in walls where water is trapped. And finally, calibrated moisture meters give them precise readings, telling them exactly how wet a piece of wood or drywall still is.
Now, what's probably most important to understand here is that none of this is guesswork. The entire industry is governed by really rigorous standards like the IICRC S500. It's a process that's driven by data and repeatable science to make sure the job is done right every single time.
And this brings us to the final, and maybe the most critical phase. See, the job isn't finished when a surface just looks dry. No way. It's finished when it is scientifically proven to be dry. And right here, it's really important to understand the difference between two key terms. Everything we've talked about so far, that's mitigation, the emergency response to stop any further damage. The best way to think of it is stopping the bleeding. Restoration is the next step. That's the rebuilding and repairing of things like drywall and flooring. That's healing the wound. And you absolutely cannot start healing the wound until you've stopped the bleeding. So, to officially close out this mitigation phase, technicians follow a really strict checklist. They take and log moisture readings every single day, adjusting the equipment based on what the data tells them. They use these penetrating meters to confirm the internal moisture content of materials has returned to its normal pre-loss state. And all of this gets meticulously documented for the insurance provider. And this just shows you how precise the whole process is. Professionals aren't just aiming for dry. They're aiming for specific, measurable targets. For wood flooring, that means getting the moisture content below 12%. For drywall, it has to be less than 1%. These are the hard data points that prove the job is truly done. It's only when those scientific targets are met and logged that the equipment is finally removed. At that point, and only at that point, the mitigation is officially complete. The property is stable, it's safe, and it's ready for any repairs that need to be made. Which really just leaves us with one final critical question. The immediate disaster has been handled, your home is now dry, but when you think about all those vulnerabilities we started with, the aging pipes, the unpredictable weather, is your home truly protected from this happening all over again? Because fixing the damage is one thing, but preventing it, that's another thing entirely.